Ana Gomez. Really, really enjoyed my conversation. I love talking to authors. Who she writes as Christina Bray. Great 5 books that she wrote. She's originally from the Philippines, came to the U.S. when she was married, and she's in the Chicago area. The first 2 books on her mother's passing. Fascinating background. She is the CFO of a major publishing company in the U.S. and writes. She's literary awards. She's written bestsellers. Her first 2 books on her mother's passing, The Light in the Wound, Insipid. Third is about a midlife crisis. Fourth is a dark period, Impossible Love, Felt Hopeless. And then The Year I Left. Just great 5 books. Now she's finished her second book, Hallmark book. She's completely in a new chapter of her life. She has a producer, partner, writer, Christopher Paloha. Just a fascinating background with Anna. It's fascinating to talk to her. How she started writing these books is just incredible. And she got a huge following. Like I said, so many literary awards. We talk about characters, how they take a life of their own. I ask her where she puts the reader in mind when she's writing. You'll be amazed at this answer. I've never heard this answer before. But it is fascinating, and it's a great discussion. I also ask her, does she want her readers to listen or to read? We have all these books, audio books. Another fascinating answer. Great discussion with Ana Gomez. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic. I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family, in their passion, in their careers, and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration.
Okay.
Ana Gomez, thank you so much for your time today. I'm very, very excited to talk to you. Anna, how do you handle the blank page as an author?
I think this is a discipline conversation, so it's with a lot of discipline because, as you know, this is my side gig, and so
Yes.
I've got a full-time job, and so
Yeah.
it's a lot of time management and it's a lot of prioritization. But the blank page is basically never blank because my thoughts are always ongoing. My ideas, the creative side of me is just constantly just flowing, and so it's just really a matter of finding the time to get it on that blank page, basically.
Are you a CFO or are you an author? Or are you a
Ah,
mother? Or are you a wife? Or are you yeah,
I'm all of the above,
right.
actually. So
Yeah, you certainly are. You have 3 kids. Yeah, I believe. And you were married and to another Filipino, but a kind of an American Filipino, I think. And you kind
yes,
of whisked
yes,
off to Chicago.
yes. He's an American Filipino. He grew up here. Yes. So
And the big turning point, though, into where you get this degree in the Philippines, or economics, your accounting, you come to the US, you can't get a job. You get a job being a copy girl, and you work your way up to CFO. Absolutely inspiring. But you have this pivot in your life, Anna, where your mother passes away.
yes. and not in a good situation where I wasn't able to see her before she passed away, just so busy with life and, running around, assimilating into a new culture, bringing up the children. And she passes away. And so I have all this, not just these emotions, but the feelings, the guilt, and everything. And so, what better way than to just put it on paper? Or so I
Mm.
thought. So,
Yeah, you talk about you were a bit estranged, and then you finally take some couple weeks off during, I think, Thanksgiving, and you go over there, and she passes away about 3 days before you get there, and
yes,
very tough to reconcile with that.
right. Very tough. Um, it was my first lesson and just not not being able to take fully advantage of life or taking things for granted. So it was my first. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Really, it did, and it still does. It's your
Mm,
mom. So
right. And that's 2010, I believe. But and so your first two books, the light in the wound and Sepid are mainly about your mother passing away, and those came out 2013 and 2014.
yes. So I wrote them. I self-published the first book, The Light in the Wound, and I really thought it was just a matter of self. I met some wonderful people in the publishing industry, in the indie book industry, and they kind of guided me as to how to publish this book on Amazon. And I did that knowing that I would just run away from that and just continue with my life as it is, meaning working on my career, raising the children. It didn't really turn out that way. 7 books later, here we are talking. So
It's just an interesting outlet how how we deal with loss like that, and you just put it to paper. I mean, tell me the process. Did you just want to express yourself? Did you punch the pillow? Did you yell in the pillow? Did you're a runner? How did you get? I mean, it's not common that somebody takes everything out on the written page.
yeah, I mean, I've always liked to write, meaning not formally, but in high school and college, I would write poetry to my boyfriend, send
Yeah.
love letters, all these things. So I always had that. I don't know. I was always drama queen in that sense. And then when she passed away, I think there was a lot of things that I went through growing up in a different culture, growing up in a different family, having the family dynamics that I had. Um, that I thought, it'd be very interesting to write about it and to honor her in some way
Mm.
with this book. But at the same time, when I realized when I was writing that book, it was number one, the boom of the romance industry. It was the E.L. James boom and Colleen Hoover, and everyone was writing about these romance stories. And I thought, you know what, in that particular stage of dealing with my mother and living with my mother, I did have, two relationships that only two actually that just kind of dictated the choices I made in my life, and so I wanted to write about that. And um, it was just so therapeutic for me to actually put it on paper and write about our relationship and how wonderful she was, and despite all her faults, how she tried so hard to be a good mom, and then mixed with a little experience on the romantic side. That's what I did, and I self-published it. As you said, I'm a runner. Went for a 10-mile run the day right after I pressed published, and didn't even come back. Like I was supposed to
Right.
run 6 miles. I just kept going. I'm like, I didn't want to go back and face what I had just did. I didn't know how it would be received. And, I'm so blessed that it was received in a good way. And again, as I say, 7 books later, here I am. So
Yeah. Yeah, and lots of literary awards, lots of bestsellers. But the process of writing the first book there, did you storyboard? Did you mind map? Did you plan out nothing?
no, I actually started out with the scene on the airplane. It was the exact scene as I was on the airplane flying home, and I just wrote that part, and then it just grew like it was super blank. That's one thing you're gonna learn about me. I'm super organic. I can't plan. I can't plot. I can't plan. I just write. It just comes, and I just keep going. So yeah. So there was no plotting, no nothing. And as a new author, I would say, and this is for all new authors, I learned a lot. Like the first version of the first book I've ever written was probably the worst. Like I'm afraid to even go back and read it. Like I had no experience. Um, and then you learn as you work with really good editors. You start to learn the actual art of writing. Um, and as you get denied by publishers and as they critique your book and hurt your feelings and tell you all these things, it's actually a lesson in writing.
Hmm. I find certain irony on it in that you don't plan or plot, but that's what you really do for your career as a
Yes,
CFO.
yes, yes. Um, which is which is why writing is probably so therapeutic for me because
Mm,
I don't have a plan. I walk into an office and I have a plan. I have a
mm.
strategic growth plan. I have a financial plan. Even raising the kids, I have plans because time is so limited, that you need to make sure you're on schedule and you do this and that. And writing is just where I don't plan. When I write, I don't even plan my day. I can stay in my pajamas all day and just zone out. So different.
It's very different. Is it the difference between art and science?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a good way to explain it. I think that is. You know what? And writing for everyone, you, me, anyone, is kind of your take on your experiences because first of all, you write what you know, and
Mm.
second, the emotions are real when you've actually experienced them. And so that side of the writing, you know, part of my life has really been able to help me be a better leader on the other side as well. It's art and science, and then they kind of meet in the middle.
Then your third book in 2016, in this life, and that's more of a kind of your midlife crisis. You're working a lot. You're not at home as much as you'd like.
Yeah. Um, it's another thing, and I think this is too transparent of me, but I've always been transparent about it. Every book I've written is a stage in my life. So in this life, it's about impossible love and fate. You look back at your life and the people you've met and the directions you ended up taking, and that there's always a plan for you. um, I believe strongly in that. Now, the next book, The Year I Left, was midlife crisis, depression. You're rising up in your career and you're asking yourself, like, what's this? What's next? Like, all this pressure to succeed. Now you're there. Now you're a CFO. You can't be promoted to anything else. I mean, you're at the
Mm.
top of the C suite. You're a strategic partner to your CEO. Like, what's next? Like, is this it? And so you think about those things and then you ponder in your life, then you blame yourself for ignoring your children, all these things. And
Quite a
I'm so
ride.
lucky. I got away with writing about it.
You really did, and that was your outlet. And I love the stories you talk about taking the train into work and the people you met on the train, and they became fast friends, and eventually they would read your work, and so you make these friends all along the way. You just keep climbing and climbing and climbing.
Yeah, yeah. Hard climb, by the way.
Yeah, very hard climb. 8 goodbyes and then the year I left. So you had the dark period, impossible love, you felt hopeless, and the year I left. So it's like it's these what seems great. You describe it. I heard you say you describe it on the outside. Everything looks successful. You're climbing. You're away. You're traveling. You're in France a lot, and but on the inside there was depression, and you were unfulfilled.
Yeah, yeah. Looking for something else. And you don't know if it your marriage, is it your children, is it your job, so you're trying to figure that out. And you've never felt so alone because you can't really talk about it because there's a stigma around, just being at the top of the chain like that and mentoring and inspiring people, but at the same time you feel like, okay, I don't feel that way.
Hmm.
So
At all on the inside.
yeah.
Yeah. And why is your pen name Christine Bray?
So when I first when I because my first book was really real. It was, if someone in the Philippines picked up that book, they would know it was my family. They would know it was me, just
Uh,
because I grew up in a culture where your last name is something over there, and if you say your last name, people know who you are. They know your background. They know your family. So that was one thing. And I also,
mm,
again, I still do, Joey, to some extent, feel the stigma of corporate America against romance writers. Um,
hmm.
I hid it. I hid it for 3 years. I mean, nobody knew I was writing books at work, because it's that push and pull where can you really do your real job if you're like writing books on the side?
Hmm.
Today I'm comfortable with it. I've accomplished enough to let people know, hey, I can do both. I can do actually more than both. But at that time, I was still building my career, and I thought it would be easier for me to separate two personalities: the Christine Bray going to book signings all over social media, and then there's the Anna Gomez, at that time controller, promoted to CFO, managing all these projects, and I thought I could keep them really separate.
Was there fear that you would not be get promoted, or was it just a fear that you wouldn't be taken seriously as a romance writer? I'm unaware of like kind of this stigma.
I think all of the above.
Hmm.
Um, and I've been to so many places, and obviously I grew up in a different culture, so culturally I know what the reactions will be. At that time, I was working for a French company. They're pretty conservative about things like this, and so um, there was
Hmm.
a fear. There's actually not just a fear but a confirmation that there is a possibility I wouldn't get the top spot
Wow.
because of woman writer, romance writer, all that. So that's gone now. I think I've
Uh,
weathered that, but when you're trying to aspire to a higher position, um, there are certain roadblocks that people
mm,
believe are roadblocks. I didn't think they were, but then I ended up thinking they were because they were actually told to me. So
hmm. Was it the problem that you had a side gig and perhaps you weren't paying complete focus on the full, or is it specifically about being romance novelist? Do
I
you
think
feel?
romance novelist. I feel like I was told that if someone Googled me and they would put together CFO, global company,
Huh.
author, book signings, that it wouldn't bode well. And again, culturally, it was probably different here in the US, but I was working again with companies with different cultures, and it was like it's not it's not gonna mix well. Did we eventually do it? Yes. Um, and that was more because some my mentors and my bosses were supportive of it, and they were like, no, that's not true. Let's just get that out of the way right now. It's not.
Mm,
But yeah, yeah.
wonderful. And the characters, I often hear from writers that they take a life of their own and they almost dictate to you what they're going to do. What's that
Yeah,
process like?
their voices in your head.
They are, aren't they?
Yeah, they just come to life on their own, and I think it's very hard to let go of one versus the other. Like when you're ending a book, and I'm sure you know this, it's like it's really hard to let go. They've been a part
Wow.
of your life. Yeah.
Do you have a specific trajectory that the character is going to take, or do you discover it as you're writing?
This is funny, but I write the end first of
Ah,
every book. So I
wow.
know I know where the character will end up, and then the book starts to become the evolution and the
Huh.
catharsis and the change that that person needs to go through to get to where they are at the end.
Have you ever changed your mind?
Yes. Well, and most of the time the publisher makes me change my mind too.
Ah,
Like, no, this is too sad. Change it.
really?
Yeah. Yeah. I learned only a couple years ago that to be classified as romance, you must have a happy ending. And some of my, sometimes I believe that characters need to go through this evolution, and sometimes it doesn't end happy because there's so much they have to work on, right?
Right.
So,
Wow. It's I hear about people, songwriters who would say things like, this it came to me, but it wasn't me. There's a classic story, of course, where Bob Dylan writes Along the Watchtower, and within a couple of weeks, he sees Jimi Hendrix performing it and says, "That was never my song. That's the way it should have been played. I'm never going to perform it again." So it's like the artist kind of takes it in, but it's not theirs. Do you feel that way at all? Do you feel like these characters are they're kind of coming towards you and entering you, and they've got a life of their own?
Yeah, definitely. They all have a life of their own. They have snippets of people that you've met, that you've loved, that have impacted you in them, in their personalities, but totally they become it's like having
Wow.
three kids that are like totally different. And they take a life of their own. And I know it sounds crazy, but makes me sound crazy, but it's true. It's like they're their own people.
Whoever battle, I'm sorry, I keep harping on this. It's just so
Yeah.
cool to me. I don't know what it's like. Do you ever think this one part of yourself say, I want this to go in a different way, but this character is telling me to go this way?
Oh, for sure. Of course.
Wow.
Of course. Because you're right. You start out with where you want them to go, but then there's things that happen within the story that you're writing that like makes them actually go in their own direction. And then you're like, okay, well just take it there. Let's just take it there and see. Um, and then there's different scenarios that you can go through. But at the end you end up I make them end up where I want them to end up,
Mm.
regardless of, and sometimes a character you'll write will take longer to get there because you add things along the way and so
Do you ever, in public, bump into somebody at a restaurant, wherever, and think, "Whoa, that is just like that character"?
yes. Or I'll be on the train and I'll make up stories in my head. Like there's a man sitting by himself. I wonder if he's divorced. He looks really sad. Well, I make up stories. When I go
Wow.
for a run, I see an abandoned house. I'm like, well, maybe they lost their jobs and they separated. And then I make this story up in my head. Or, you know, um, like for example, I work in Chicago. I've always been fascinated with the story of homelessness. And when I write something about someone who's homeless, but I'm so afraid that there's so much damage, I wouldn't know how to end it or fix it, right? So eventually I want to write a book about that because it fascinates me. The human element of that just fascinates me so much. I know there are good stories, good heartfelt stories about that. Yeah, so everywhere I go, it's an idea to me.
And do you watch a movie or a series or read another book and think, wow, this is a great character that kind of has a decent start or finish, but I'd like to take them in a different area? Maybe so. I mean, do you get inspired by other stories to bring characters in?
I would say more no, because
Mm.
I have a very competitive personality.
Huh.
To me, I don't know, because of my career, because of what I went through or what I do, I have a very competitive personality, and I think that it just digs me deeper when I love reading, so I read like 2 books a week or something. I read a lot,
Wow.
but I would say, wow, it's a good book. I wish I thought of that idea. I would always say that. Or wow, this person writes so well. Like I wish I wrote that way. Um, but I would never take their characters and think about it if it as if it were mine, or I would never take their
Mm.
story as an inspiration, because I stay away from that, because as an author, it's a very hard industry as it is. And
Right.
I I don't read books that I want to compete with, or I don't even
Mm.
follow a lot of people on social media, because I know myself. I'm so competitive. I'll be like, I want to be them. Why aren't I doing this? Or
Mm.
and and a big thing for me in this writing career is that I don't write full time. And so I don't have the luxury of other authors who write full time,
Mm.
who can market themselves all day, who can post all day. I don't have that luxury. I have a set schedule. I'm a CFO by day and I write at night and on weekends. And I find that if I follow people that are doing it in a better way, I it brings me down. So I don't.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
So
does.
I ignorance is
And
bliss, I guess, and I just do
yes,
my own thing.
I've heard like comedians won't listen to other comedians, because they just want, yeah, they want their own. How when writing, where do you put the reader? Does the reader come first? Do you continually ask yourself, how is the reader going to interpret this? Are they going to get bored? Are they excited? Where's the reader where you're writing?
Nowhere. The
Really?
reader is the reader is in the editing stage when
Mm.
the editor will tell me,
Wow.
the reader won't like
Wow.
that, or and then we argue a little bit, and I'll be like, I don't care what the reader thinks, or I care what the reader thinks.
Huh.
Um, but it's nowhere. The reader is nowhere when I'm writing the book, and for the same reason, because it'll it'll kill my mojo. Like I just have to keep going.
Right. Right. Rick Rubin, the famous producer, music producer, he just wrote a book recently, and he says he puts the listener dead last. He doesn't care. He just wants to make music that feels good to him. And Quentin Tarantino, the movie director, says this: "I make movies for myself. Anybody can come and watch if they want." So it sounds like you do the same thing.
Yeah, and I think it might not be the right reason for other people, but for me, that is the reason I have for writing, and it helps me. It gets me out of the fray of competition, of trying to fit in, of doing all that, because I'm doing my own thing. I'm doing my own thing, and it gets picked up. It gets picked up, which thankfully it does get picked up.
Yes, it
But
does.
um, you know, and I think I've always been very open about this. People ask me when we're pitching a book or a screenplay or a script, they say like, "Well, what are your counts? How many books have you sold?" I don't even know how to go in there and look it up.
Do you prefer the reader to read or to listen to your
I think
books?
I think to read. I think there's a power in that, in those words when you read them. I think I've always been into lyrical words, and I think that gets lost in some shape or form. Although I do listen to books too, so some people like to listen.
It does add a different twist. Like I've been listening to some of the kind of the classics,
Yeah.
read by, and just kind of reinterpreting them now in somebody else's voice is always interesting. And people are on the go, and it happens. So now in 2020, on a remarkable thing happens, the world of Hallmark, right? So now you a great story I want you to share with everybody that I loved how you met, of course, Christopher Paloha,
Yeah.
and you got this, a spreadsheet from Hallmark as what their formula is, and here we are with your books there. This kind of new chapter. I don't know what we call it, chapter of your life.
Yes, and it's been a fantastic journey. Chris has really become a genuine true friend, and so
Mm.
whether we're writing books or not, I gained this amazing human being as a friend. But you know, we were at a point where I wrote The Year I Left at a time where no one wanted to read The Year I Left
Mm.
because they wanted happy stories. And The Year I Left is really about a woman's journey through depression and whatnot. So it wasn't picked up, it didn't do well. And so I said, you know what? I think I've said my story. I've gone from starting out as a child and writing about that with my mother to writing about the depression and what I felt as I rose up the ranks. I think I'm done. And so I said to my agent, I'm going to take a break, a couple of years. I really need to focus on my career. And the kids at this time were, on their own, having their own jobs, and I just wanted to enjoy, time traveling with them and spending time with them. That come visit, and then COVID hit, and my agent said, or my manager said, everyone's looking for content. Please just write one more for Hallmark. And I really had never seen a Hallmark movie. I mean, I cry at Hallmark commercials and all that. Even as a child or as a teenager, but I've never really been into, Hallmark movies. And so, but I knew their reputation, straightforward, plaid shirts,
Yes.
um, boy
Boy
meets
meets
girl,
girl.
they
Yep.
fight. and
Yes.
and and to me, and I was telling, and I tell friends, like, it's the perfect movie actually, because you can go in the kitchen, you can do chores, you come back, you still know what's going to happen. You don't have to rewind, because
Yeah.
they had a fight or something,
Mhm.
and that they're going to end up together, right? So people do chores and do everything by watching Hallmark. It's really a good feel good movie. And so I was making fun of it with my manager. I'm like, so what, are you going to send me this matrix of rules? She said, as a matter of fact, there is a spreadsheet, and it actually tells you like what you need to have. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So so that was happening. So I said, okay, fine, I'll write one more book, Hallmark, happy ending. I said, can I cuss? She said, no. Okay, no cussing. Can they kiss? She said, no, only one kiss. I'm like, okay. I said, how do they build the relationship if they don't kiss? And she's like, I don't know, find a way. You'll find a way. And I'm like, okay. And then and then we have a good friend, common friend, Chris and I. His name is Javier. He's Chris's neighbor. And Javier has gotten me on so many of my board assignments. Him and I became friends, and I was on the Hugh O'Brien Youth Organization with Javier. And he said, oh my gosh, I have a neighbor, Christopher Polaho. I think he does Hallmark movies. Do you want me to ask him if you can write a script and give it to him? And I think he's also a producer. And so Javier saw Chris while walking the dog and said, hey, I have a friend, Anna Gomez. She's now looking into writing a script for Hallmark. Like, are you interested in talking to her? And I never knew I would get that call, but Chris did call. And the first Zoom we had, he was very helpful and very open and transparent about the movie business and the industry. And he said, it would be better if we owned the IP, we would be able to go and sell it and actually
Mm.
make it into a TV movie. And I said, as a matter of fact, I'm writing a book about Hawaii. Would you like to join me? And I think I shocked him, because he's like the stranger asking me to co-write with her. But I just had a good feeling about him the first time I met him. And so in 5 days, we had a contract written. We had an agreement that we would write 5 books together. Um, and it has opened up the world of Hollywood and show business, something I would never have been able to experience. Um, in this life was optioned for film. And so I had that experience of going to LA and meeting with the actor and actress who optioned it and everything. But I never had the experience of actually writing a book for Hallmark, and having this experience with the friendship that I have with Chris. And so um, I've been very lucky. So we released our second book last October. Um, and because we have just so many things going on, we're taking a small break to work on other assignments. But that's a long winded, yes, it's been great answer to your question. Um, yeah. And seeing the writer's strike and the actors strike from an actual person from Hollywood's point of view has been just eye opening.
Mm. And weren't you and Chris wearing the same shirt in that first Zoom meeting?
Oh my gosh, yes, the same stripe, black and white shirt. We pointed at each other like, so. I think that was it. It was fate.
And you write moments like this and where the sun rises together.
Yes,
How is
yes,
that? I've seen interviews with both of you. You guys have great chemistry together.
yeah. We finish each other's sentences. We have the same writing style. So it was moments like this was maybe half written by the time I met him, but he had lived in Hawaii. His son was actually born in Hawaii, and so he knew all these places that tourists don't really know about. And what we were writing about moments like this is really like savoring every moment you have together. And so he wrote all the moments on that book, the moments tours we call them, and in Hawaii and all the things that he did there. And it was easy to write because he basically said, I've never written a book before. Tell me what to do. And so I told him, write the moments. And so I took the moments that he wrote and put it in the book. The second book was a different experience because the second book was a full book that we wrote together, and we called it Chapter Tennis. And so he would write a chapter and I would answer it back with the next chapter. He would write the next chapter. So we went off each other's ideas and chapters. And it was a really good collaboration. I mean, we wrote it really quickly. And, you know, again, we are looking forward. He's done with the third book. Um, so we're just looking forward to just finishing the series together.
You've never written with a partner before, isn't it? Is it daunting? Is it welcomed?
It was daunting at first. Um, for him, when I asked him to write with me, I said, I'm going to send you a book that I had written in this life. He was going to London to film Jurassic Park. And I said, read it on the plane. Let me know if you like my writing style. And then I'm also going to send you moments, the part that I wrote. He kept asking me to send to him, and I kept making excuses not to send it to him. I mean, no one has ever read my book at that stage. I
Mm,
don't even have beta readers because, as I said, I don't want to put myself in the mind of asking for people's approval until I finally
mm,
write the book.
mm.
So it was very hard for me. It was very daunting for somebody to actually read a draft that I had written, um, just a rough draft. And it was hard to open up to him about it. But I felt very vulnerable. But the effect of that was actually a good thing because he first of all it was a positive reaction, so he loved it, and he
Mm.
said I would be very proud to put my name to this book, and so that kind of like took away all my insecurities. But it was also because you spend so much time with your you put so much of your personal heart into a story, and to have someone read it, before it's edited, before anything else, it's just like putting your heart on a platter and serving it
Mm.
up. um, so it was hard, and it was hard at first to kind of get into the groove of like, okay, you write one, I write one, because then he would change what I wrote and I would change what he wrote, and then finally we said no, let's put each other's voices in and just let our voices, come out and flow. Um, so it was an adjustment, really.
Is it more difficult to write fiction or nonfiction?
I've written a lot of nonfiction, like decks and documents and
Right.
pronouncements on accounting.
Right.
That's more my flow because I have that business language. It's harder for me to write fiction in the sense that it's a totally different format, as you know. I mean, so I would say it's harder to write fiction for me,
Because you have to meet these characters that don't
to meet these
exist.
characters. Your words are different too.
Yeah, your words are different. Yeah.
Sentence structures are different. I'm so used to just writing PowerPoints and accounting pronouncement documents and processes and policies that I do for the companies and stuff like that. And then you get to which is why, as I said earlier, Joey, it's like a therapeutic escape for me to write these nonfiction
Yeah.
fiction books.
And you do a lot of travel, so you bring a lot of culture into these books. So these characters have such different backgrounds, and you have to write in their voice. I mean, that's is it exhausting, Anna? What's that like?
No, it's actually natural for me. And I think that's what I want to bring to the readers is that human experience of connecting with different cultures, and that there's a universality to feelings and love and relationships, um, that people maybe in the US, or there's a my readers are of a certain demographic, let's say, and none of them travel as much as I do, so they welcome that. They welcome the insight
Mm.
into just different cultures and the friendships that you establish when you travel a lot for work and you're on a project together, and then also you see the fallibility of just human existence, the misunderstandings you have with people, or the miscommunications you have with people, or people falling in love while they're working together. I mean, those are all the things that just make life so colorful.
there's a certain vicarious nature that we can live through these characters that go to places that we don't go to or do things that we wouldn't typically see, and that's the love and the magic of books themselves and fiction. Do you
Yeah.
have so after you don't have the reader in mind at all, but then you have the editor have the reader in mind. They've got to you got to make accommodations at the end. Are you, of your first 5 books, let's say, do you have a certain message that you want the reader to take away, or do you just say, look, here it is, and you take away what you want?
No, there's always, I always have a message, and I think I always put it in the acknowledgments. But it's always, yeah. I mean, I live this life now because of what happened between me and my mom. So it's always the brevity of life, and it's always the universality of love. So love is love. And then the last one that I learned, because I have a readers group of wonderful, amazing women from all walks of life. And I think the lesson of having all these women love these books and stories is that they're not alone. Like,
Mm.
the feelings that you have are shared by people, no matter what culture, what upbringing, what background. All those feelings that you have, whether it's sadness, depression, love, all those things are, you're not alone. There are people like right now experiencing the same thing.
That's absolutely wonderful. So you alluded kind of to it in the beginning. I started my business. I think I'm a little older than you, Anna, but I started my business. I'm in the tech industry, and in the '90s, I was working far too much, just like yourself. And I know you had created some bad habits. You stopped running. I think you said you started
Yeah.
smoking and things like. So I mean, I did similar. I was eating too much pizza, drinking too much soda. I found myself up to 340 pounds. I'm typically about
Wow.
200. Yeah, very terrible. And my daughter was just born, and the doctor said to me, if you don't lose the weight, you're not going to see her graduate. So
Yeah.
it's all I needed to hear, right? So I took the next year and a half. I lost 130 pounds. When I tell people this, I just see it in their eyes, and like, how'd you do it? What's your secret? And
Yeah.
there's no secret. There's no secret. It's just discipline, people. Come on. I'm not going to tell you anything you don't know. Losing weight's a tough thing. You got to be disciplined. You got to get focused. You got to change the way you do things. Given your extraordinary background, how does discipline play a role in your life?
Um, yeah, it plays a big role in my life. And then as I grow older and I say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna enjoy things more. I'm gonna, you know, not be as rigid or structured in my life. There still is discipline there. I think discipline plays a
Hmm.
big role in my life in terms of what do I want? What do I really want out of everything that I'm doing? What is my goal? And the discipline I get is from accomplishing that goal, which really it is to leave a legacy for my kids and to have impact in the community. And that is the discipline that I have, and that is the discipline that I go for. And how do I do that? I do that by making sure that, you know, what I say, what I do, who I mentor, who I teach, what I write about, the platform that I believe in, all have that common goal. And that's how it is. It's not about, I need to sleep 8 hours a day, and I'm really bad at sleeping. I have to tell you, I don't. So I have to do this. I have to work out every Sunday. That to me is not the discipline that I seek. The discipline that I seek is basically making sure that I'm focused on the direction I want to take and the goals that I've made for myself.
It just became kind of apparent to me. In business, we constantly setting goals, and we work backwards, right? So we have a goal, and what rocks are going to take to get there, at what quarter is it going to get done. Here's all the milestones we have to get to that goal. It seems that you actually brought that over into your writing, because you said you already know the goal of the characters, and you're writing the evolution and the catharsis to get there.
Yeah.
There's a parallel there, and you do it with your life as well. You say you have these goals of legacy and impact on society and community, and again, there's the goal, and then you're going to use some form of kind of discipline and its properties to get there.
Yes, that's exactly it. And it could vary, you know. Discipline could be, if I wanna teach the children something, or if I wanna impart something to the children, or even help them as they're managing now their careers. It could be, you know, checking in with them and making sure that I'm there for them. And that's sort of a discipline, because then I have to take time out of my busy schedule. My son is a nurse in a hospital here, and his first job was just right when COVID hit. So
Wow.
I wouldn't sleep at night. He would do the 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. shift, and I would wait for him to come home to make sure he was okay. And he would change downstairs and leave his scrubs in the car and take a shower so he didn't get a sick. Like all of
Mm,
that. The discipline I had there was not waking up in the middle of the night waiting for him. It was actually, you know, focusing on the fact that their life has to keep going.
mm.
While I was worried about him, I still had to do my job. I still had to function. I still had to take the train to Chicago, you know. Um, so I think it varies for me. It's not rules, not necessarily rules. It's just ways to get to where I need to go or want to go. I hope that answers your question in a very roundabout way.
I love it. Yeah, yeah. And there's no wrong answer to that, of course.
Yeah,
Ana Gomez, what motivates you?
good question. Just joy and peace. I think with the background that I have, with
Mm,
everything I went through, I'm motivated by just having peace, by being at peace with decisions I make. Um, Success used to motivate me a lot, but I think I'm past that stage now. Like I
mm,
think, you know, people say you're so humble, you don't know how successful you are, you've done this, this, and this, and this. But and then I realized, oh yeah, I have. So yeah, that's a good thing. And that used to motivate me a lot. I think when I was trying to be from a controller to a CFO, or if I was, working on a project. But right now I'm motivated by the fact that I really want to just be peaceful in everything, you know. When your child is hurting, or your child goes through a breakup, or your child's trying to figure out what he wants to do in life, you're not at peace because you're
mm,
worried,
mm.
you know. So I try to accept the fact I can't control what he decides to do, or I can't control the breakup or his sadness. I try to find peace in that, so that I'm motivated by the fact that I have to accept things. I know I
Not
sound so
being
dramatic, but that's
Not at
how I
all.
am.
Oh, I love it. Well, you're a romantic at heart. You tell me you cry a lot. I've heard
I
that,
know.
and
I get triggered.
you get triggered. Well, it's very tough to not try to control the things we can't control.
Yeah,
Very difficult, just mentally, and because I know I have certain control over the things I have control of, and those things that I want control of that I don't, it gets frustrating. When I have two girls, and well, they're young women now. I still call them girls, but when they're upset for whatever reason, and
yeah.
I have to show them that I have peace, and hopefully they'll find it as well. There's really nothing else to do. You got to be careful with advice because, they could reject it. It might not work for them. Here's something I did that was similar, and I don't know if I handled it correctly, but it's a children is
Haven't you learned that, Joey? They don't listen.
they don't.
They'll
They
do
won't
the
listen anyway.
opposite.
They'll do That's the other thing. They might actually be spiteful. So you got to be very careful. You got
Yes.
to be very careful. But finding peace is a lofty motivation. So how do you measure success then, Anna?
I think right now, success to me is when I get to do something that I really want to do, which is, you know, I'm getting to travel when I want to. I'm getting to spend the downtime when I want to. I taking a break from interviews when I want to. I mean, to me, I'm successful in that sense where I'm at the place where I can do and dictate what I want in my life, which wasn't always the case.
Right.
So, you know, even as you go in your career, and this is an owner of a business, it's like when you grow in your career, you can basically set. I don't have to fly a 2 a.m. flight anymore if I don't have to. If I don't, you know, I
That's
can
right.
take the midday flight and get there rested, as opposed to when we were younger and I had to like land, run to a meeting, go back. Like I can now basically choose when and where and what I want to do.
I think you're talking about freedom.
Yeah. So success is probably freedom and confidence.
Mm, yeah. There is I'm a business owner, and there is certain luxury in being able to decide what projects I work on and what I don't. But there's some projects we don't want to work on that are lucrative, so we don't really have that much of a choice. So, but being able to do what you want to do is just that's just wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, and not all the time. I mean, you've got it right in the head. I still have to work, I still have to travel, I
Right.
still have to meet with clients you don't want to meet with,
Right.
still have to
Yeah.
handle people you don't want to talk to.
Exactly. Exactly. I remember my friends would tell me, "Oh, it must be so nice you don't have a boss, you're your own boss." I said, "I have more bosses now than I've ever had. Each one of my clients is a boss. Heck, my employees are my bosses. The vendors are my I have more people that I have to answer to than I ever, the kind of false idea that, you're a business owner and you could just tell everybody to screw off and do what you want. It's the complete opposite. But freedom is uh, is absolutely wonderful. I was so excited when you accepted this, and I'm a big fan. And
I
I thank you
appreciate
so.
you.
I thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for your time, and you give me so much inspiration. And the way I consider you an artist in the fact that we have these great artists in our history that went through so much pain and delivered so much great art, and this is what you've done, and you've given us something. You're helping yourself helps others, and I wish you continued success. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor to be here. Thank you.
How can we get in touch with you, anyone who's listening?
Well, you can just go to my website, annagomezbooks.com, and just Google me. I'm everywhere because I talk a lot. So,
The website has everything there. It's got your media, it's got your links, it's got your social media. It's great, and has a great bio on you as well. Anna, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And you be well, and maybe one day we'll get a cup of coffee.
yes, for sure. I'd love that. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye now. Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations.